Hey guys, we are on 9.3, factoring all mixed up. I do know that I have some of my notes already started. I apologize for that. When I first started recording this video, it completely crashed on me. This is how far I got. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of recap what I have already done rather than print out another paper. We need to conserve trees, right? So the hardest part of this lesson is looking at an expression and knowing what to do with it. So basically I need to decide, is it guess and check? Do I factor a GCF? Is it a difference of squares? So some helpful hints would be to use the flowchart. Now if you remember from other lessons, I used this flowchart to determine what we should do with the expression that we were given. This is also on Google Classroom. If you want to print it out and have a copy of it, you can totally use it on your test. If you don't have a printer, you can put it on a note card and you can use that on the test. But I do recommend using this until you no longer need it. So the first step of all factoring is to factor out a GCF. Because it'll make your life a lot easier if you do. And then after that, you have to ask yourself, well, do you have two terms or do you have three terms? So if I have two terms and I've already factored out the GCF, is it a difference of squares? And if it is, you might want to look at lesson 9.1 to refresh your memory on how we work with the difference of squares. If you're given three terms, which is called a trinomial, that is guess and check. So it's lesson 8.3. It's also lesson 8.2, but lesson 8.3 was the one that was a little bit more complicated. So that would probably be better to look at. Okay, and then after that, we make sure that we have factored it completely. So if there are any common factors left in the parentheses, it is not factored completely, which means you did not factor out the greatest common factor. You might have just picked a smaller common factor. And then as always, you have to check your answers, distribute, FOIL, or box. Okay? All right, and I kind of summed up this little flowchart right here for the helpful hints. So always check for the GCF first. If you're given two terms, then check for a difference of squares. If you're given three terms, that is something that you're going to want to guess and check with. And again, that is lesson 8.2 and 8.3 if you need to go back and reference. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so this is how far I got on problem number 1. So let's talk about what I had did. Let me zoom in. Alright, so we list the factors of A and we list the factors of C. We've been doing this for a while now. Hopefully you're in the hang of it. Okay, so then we determined, since this value right here, the C value is positive, that both of the terms in parentheses, or excuse me, both of the signs in the parentheses have to be positive, or both of them have to be negative. Now I decide which is which by looking at the middle term. Since this middle term is positive, I know that they're both positive. Okay, now since this one is positive, since the C value is positive, I don't want to look at them as 5 apart. I want to look at it as which ones add to 5. If this was negative, then one would have to be positive and one would have to be negative, and I would want to look at it as they are 5 apart. Okay, but in this case, we're going to tell ourselves, that's why I have it in quotes, which one of these pairs adds up to 5. Okay, and I know that 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. Now remember, I have to keep them both positive, and if I did 1 plus 6, I would get 7, and that's not going to work out. Yes, I know those are 5 apart, but in order to get 5, I would have to subtract the 1, and I can't do that because they both have to be positive. All right, so now I know that I'm going to do my double bubble. The A values go on the front attached with the Y, so I'm going to have a Y and a Y, and the C values go in the back, so I'm going to have 2 and 3. Now you probably want to do this with a pencil just in case your first guess doesn't check out. Now the ones with the A value 1, we can see that 2 plus 3 equals 5, so we're going to know. But better to be safe than sorry, so let's use a pencil. And we also know that they both have to be positive. So then let's do our check. Remember, still required. So I'm going to FOIL it. If you want to box it, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. So y times y, y squared. Y times 3, positive 3y. 2 times y, 2y, 2 times 3, positive 6. Okay, and then we combine like terms, we get y squared plus 5y plus 6, and it checks out, because that's what we had originally. Don't forget, box, circle, bubble, highlight your answers once you do your check. Alright, so that was lesson 8.2, if you want to go ahead and write that down. Now let's look over here. Do we have a GCF? No, we don't, huh? Because this is d squared, this is f squared, and there's no numbers but 81. Okay, let's go here. How many terms do we have? We were given 2 terms, right? So what should we check for? Difference of squares. Okay, is this a difference of squares? Is it a square minus a square? So d squared, that's a square, minus, we got the minus part. Is 81 a perfect square? Well, if you're not sure, you can totally take your calculator and take the square root of 81. And if you get a whole number, 9, then it is a perfect square. So 81 is a square. And then we have f squared, which is also a squared. So this is a difference of squares. Difference of squares. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to set up 2 parentheses. We're going to make one positive, one negative. Then we're going to take the square root of each term. So we take the square root of d squared and we put it in the front. Then we take the square root of 81f squared and we put it in the back. Okay? All right. So the square root of d squared is just d. And then the square root of 81f squared is equal to what? This is the one where I might want you guys to write it down if you're a little rusty on the things that we learned. Might have been last semester even. Okay, so remember you would factor tree 81. You would get 9 times 9. Factor tree again, 3 times 3. 3 times 3. And then f squared, you'd have 2 f's. So what we'd write in the radical would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 3's and 2 f's. 1, 2. We'd circle our pairs. And then we'd sacrifice 1, 1 would come out. Sacrifice 1, 1 would come out. And then remember when they come out of the parentheses, you put a multiplication symbol because you're multiplying. Sacrifice 1, save 1. So then it would be 3 times 3 is 9. So it would be 9f. Okay? And then if you are struggling with stuff like this, I can always make you a supplemental worksheet and provide you with the answers so you can get better. Just remember, anything that you're not very good at right now, if you practice, you will get better. Okay? All right, so let me pick some colors here. This D is going to go on the front. And then this 9F is going to go in the back. And there we go. That's the answer. Okay, we can do our check. Foil or box. D plus 9F. D minus 9F. So D times D is D squared. D times 9F would be, or negative 9F, would be negative 9DF. You can write it as FD, it doesn't really matter. I like to put it in alphabetical order. And D comes before F, right? I hope so. Okay, and then 9F times D is positive 9DF. And then 9F times negative 9F is negative 81F squared. Look at your middle terms. They're the same but different signs, so that means they go to 0. And then I get D squared minus 81F squared. That's what we started out with. Check it, we're good. Okay? All right, so let's look at number 3. What should we do? Does it have a GCF? No GCF. How many terms? 3 terms. So it's what? Guess and check. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing that we were doing all last unit. List the factors of A, 1 and 3. List the factors of C, also 1 and 3. Okay? All right, let's talk about signs here. Since this one is negative, I know that one of the parentheses is going to be positive and one is going to be negative. And in this case, now we want to look at it as they're 8 apart. 8 apart. And remember, we're going to have to check it with the brackets. Okay? I'm going to use a pencil just in case my first guess doesn't work out. I might have to switch some things. I'm going to put my 3 in right here and my in right there, because remember the A values go in the front, and then the C values go in the back. So what if I put the 1 and the 3 right here? I need to check it with my brackets, and I may have to switch the 1 and the 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, so that's 9n. 1 times n is just n. Oh, those are actually 8 apart. We're cool. But we need, when we add them together, we need it to add up to negative 8. So which one of these should I make negative, the n or the 9n? The negative 9n, right? Because when I add negative 9 plus 1, I get negative 8. Okay, so then remember the signs go counterclockwise, so this positive is going to go there, and this negative is going to bring it up. All right, so your answer, 3n plus 1 n, oops, hold on, I need to grab some whiteout. Where's all my whiteout? Sorry guys, give me 1 second. All right, that should be a minus 3. And then don't forget your check. At this point, you guys should be the masters of foiling or boxing, so I'm just going to do this like super fast. So 3n times n is 3n squared, and then I have a minus 9n plus n minus 3, combine like terms, what is that, negative 8? So 3n squared minus 8n minus 3. Check. That's what I wanted. All right. Okay, now what? GCF. Remember, always check for GCF first. I cannot stress that enough. GCF. Well, they're both even, so I know that at least 2 will go into both of them. But let's see. Let's list the factors of 8 and then work backwards to see which ones go into 50. So 8. I have 1 times 8, 2 times 4, 3, and 3 doesn't go into it. So I just have 1, 2, 4, and 8. All right, so now I'm going to work backwards. I want to try the biggest one first. Does 8 go into 50? Let's see. 50, oops, sorry, you can't see that. 50 divided by 8? No, not going to work out. It's a decimal. What about 4? 50 divided by 4? Nope, decimal. Well, I do know 2 does. So the answer is 2. So the GCF is equal to 2. So I need to factor that out first. Now remember, when you're factoring out a GCF, you always have 1 parentheses. So I'll put a 2 on the outside with 1 parentheses. So what goes right here? 2 times what gives me 50d squared? 2 times 25 gives me 50, and then I need that d squared. There's a minus right there. There's a minus right there. So what goes right here? 2 times what gives me 8? 4. All right, let's check our flow chart. Where'd my flow chart go? So I factored out a GCF. How many terms left in parentheses? 1, 2. So now we have to check, is it a difference of squares? Okay, so is it a square minus a square? Yes, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. I'm going to abbreviate it, DOS. If you're not going to remember what DOS stands for, just write down difference of squares. Okay, so I know that I have to take the square root of the first term, put it in the front of the parentheses. Take the square root of the back term, put it in the back of the parentheses. Then I need to make 1 positive and 1 negative. And just bring the 2 down. Bring the 2 down. 1's positive, 1's negative. So what is the square root of 25d squared? It is 5d. And that's going to go in the front. 5d, 5d. And then the square root of 4 is equal to 2. And those go in the back. There's your answer. Okay, so we do have to check it, and this one might be a little bit more difficult to check. Foil first, distribute last. It's a lot easier if you do that. Okay, so I'm going to foil first. So I'm going to do 5d plus 2 times 5d minus 2. So I'm going to get what? I'm going to do it over here. 5d times 5d is 25d squared minus 10d plus 10d, and then minus 4. I'm running out of room. So the middle terms, negative 10d plus 10d goes to 0. We expected that because it's a difference of squares. So then I get 25d squared minus 4, but don't forget about your little 2. Okay, so then you have to do 2 times 25d squared minus 4 and distribute. So you get 50d squared minus 8. And that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so you do have to do the check. If it is not on your paper, you're going to take a 0 on that problem. If it's on a homework, you're going to get kicked back until you do it again. Okay? So just get in the habit of doing it. All right, let's see here. Now, number 5. What is that? Is that, do we have a, first of all, we should probably check to see if we have a greatest common factor. Oh, no. So is there a greatest common factor? And I'm going to use scratch paper for this, just in case I run out of room. Because we have 3 terms here. So we need to figure out, is there a number that will go into 12, 36, and 27? And if there is, what's the biggest one? So for 12, I have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Right? It's 36, 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and then 6. I put it out of order, but that's okay. Ooh, that's going to bug me. Actually, let me switch the 6 and the 9. I should have given myself a little bit more room. 6 and 9. Okay, 27. 1 times 27. 3 times 9, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? 8, 9, that's the only ones. All right, so which one is in all of these? So is 27 in these guys? No. 9? Is 9 in all of them? No, because 9 doesn't go into 12. 3? Yep, there it is. 3 goes into all of them. So the GCF here, GCF is equal to 3. So we should probably factor that out first. And remember, when you're factoring out the GCF, you have 1 parentheses for your first step. So 3 times 4 will give me 12. So I know it's 4w squared right there. If this one's a negative, I know this one's a negative. 3 times 12. And what? 9. All right. So now what's left in the parentheses is 3 terms. And that is going to be your guess and check. So go ahead and bring your 3 down so you don't forget it. And then our next step is the double bubble. And this is where you're probably going to want a pencil. So I need to list the factors of A, which is 4. List the factors of C, which is 9. 4, I have 1 times 4, 2 times 2. 9, 1 times 9, 3 times 3. Okay, so since this one is positive, actually, we're not going to look at this one now. We're going to look at this one. So it's positive. We know they're both positive or they're both negative. How do I determine which one's which? They're both going to be negative because this middle term's negative. So I want them both negative. Okay? All right, so we're going to check it, or we're going to guess the ones closest together first. If it doesn't work out, we're just going to move up the list. So let's try 2w and 2w. Okay, now when you're guessing this, you're trying to get this set of parentheses back. Don't look at the original. If you actually, as a matter of fact, let's cover up the original so it doesn't confuse us. Okay, so this is the new one that we're looking at. You can still see that. Let me solve that problem. Okay, so we're going to try 2 and 2 and 3 and 3. And then we're going to check it with the brackets, and we're going to see if we can get to 12, because that's our middle term now. So 2 times 3 is 6, so that's 6w. 3 times 2 is 6, so that's 6. Ooh, look at, if I add those up, I get 12, right? But they both have to be negative. Negative, 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 negative. Hey, look at that. First check works out. Fantastic. And that's the answer. And then don't forget to do your check. We're running out of room here. I think I'm writing a little too big. Your check would be to FOIL first, distribute second. So 2w minus 3 times 2w minus 3, you get 4w squared minus 6w minus 6w plus 9. Combine like terms. 4w squared minus 12w plus 9. And then don't forget we have that 3 chilling in the front. Now you have to distribute that 3. So 3 times 4 is 12. So 12w squared. 3 times 12 is 36. So minus 36w. And 3 times 9 is positive 27. Is that what we were looking for originally? Yes. Checks out. All right. And we definitely should have given you more room to write. I apologize. If you need to use scratch paper, you are totally free to do so, because it's going to bother me if it's all squished together. All right. So let's look at this one. So I know that there's 2 terms. Let's just pretend there's not. Okay, so sometimes it looks way more complicated than it really needs to be. So we're still going to list the factors of A. A is 1 here, so we just have 1 and 1. Factors of C would be 27. 1 times 27, 3 times 9. And then since this one's positive, they're both positive or they're both negative. And we're going to look at it like add to 12. Okay, so which one of these will add to negative 12 if I make them both negative? The 3 and the 9, right? So we know that this is the pair we're going to use. So even though there's 2 variables, it's not too bad. Okay? So the G and the G go on the front, and the K's are going to go on the back with the 3 and the 9. So 3K, 9K. And then we decided earlier that since this one's negative, they both have to be negative. So negative, negative. That's your answer. And we're going to FOIL it out just so you see that, oh wait, that is right. I remember when I was learning these, I was just like, that can't be right. And then after I FOILed it a few times, I'm like, oh, it totally is. So let's check it. So G minus 3K times G minus 9K. G times G is G squared. G times negative 9K, negative 9 GK, KG? I don't know. Negative 3 times, negative 3K times G is negative 9GK. You could write both of them as KG. It's not going to matter. Negative times negative is positive. 3 times 9 is 27. And K times K is K squared. All right, let's combine like terms. G squared minus 18GK plus 27K squared. So it's probably smart to make it look like this, because if we wrote it as KG, we might think that we're wrong. But we're not, because it checks out. Okay? All right, let's talk about number 7. GCF. Is there a GCF between 100 and 64? I think so, because aren't they both even? So we know at least 2 will go into it. So let's try. 100, actually I'm going to do 64 first. Sorry. 64 and 100. So 64, I have 1 and 64. I'm going to do a big long list. 1 and 64. 2 and, is it 32? Let's use a calculator. 64 divided by 2, 32. Does 3 go into 64? 64 divided by 3. Nope. What about 4? 64 divided by 4. Yes. 16. 4 and 16. What about 5? No, 5 doesn't go into 64. What about 6? 64 divided by 6. No. 64 divided by 7. No. 64 divided by 8. Yep, 8 times 8. 9, 10, 11, 12. So once we get to 8 times 8, we know that's going to be the last one. All right, so we could work this list backwards. 64 doesn't go into 100, right? Nope. 32 doesn't go into 100. Nope. 16 doesn't go into 100. Nope. Does 8 go into 100? I don't know. Let's find out. 100 divided by 8. Nope, get a decimal. What about 4? 100 divided by 4? Ooh, 25. So 4 is our GCF between the numbers. And then what about the variables? You choose the variable with the smallest exponent. So you're going to choose x, because this is x to the first power, right? All right, so for the GCF, the first step, 1 parentheses. Second step, if it's a difference of squares, we'll do the double bubble. So 4 times what gives me 100? 25. I already have 1x. I need 3, so how many more do I need? 2. If there's a minus here, there's a minus here. What's 64 divided by 4? 64 divided by 4 is 16. So I know there goes a 16 right there. 4x times 16 gives me 64x. Okay? Oh no. Oh my goodness. Sorry guys, my computer keeps shutting off. Okay. So now, what we're left in the parentheses is, with 2 terms, is it a difference of squares? So is it a square minus a square? Yes, it is. Where'd my pen go? So I know I'm going to bring my 4x down, and then I have my double bubble. Take the square root of the 25x squared, put it in the front. Take the square root of 16, put it in the back. So what is the square root of 25x squared? And what is the square root of 16? Square root of 25x squared, 5x. So that 5x goes in the parentheses, or excuse me, goes in the front of the parentheses. And then square root of 16 is 4. 4 goes in the back of the parentheses. And what do I know about the signs? One has to be positive, one has to be negative. And there you have it. Check. FOIL first, distribute last. So 5x plus 4, 5x minus 4, and we're going to FOIL it out. So I get what? 25x squared minus 20x plus 20x minus 16. Middle terms go to 0. 25x squared minus 16. And then you got to put that 4x down. When I distribute that, I get 100x to the third minus 64x. Check. Okay? All right. What about number 8? Perfect squares? Is that a difference of squares? Yes, it is. So I need to double bubble it. One's positive, one's negative. I take the square root of both. It's the same game. So what is the square root of x to the 4th? What is the square root of 16? So the square root of x to the 4th is x squared. The square root of 16 is 4. Now, if you are rusty with taking the square root of like x to the 4th power, you definitely want to ask me for another practice worksheet. So at this point in your mathematical career, you should know that x to the 4th, the square root of x to the 4th is x squared. Now, if you don't, all that means is you need more practice. Okay? Please reach out to me so I can hook you up with some more practice. All right, so the x squareds go in the front, and the 4s go in the back. Am I done? No. This one I can't do anything with because that first set of parentheses, that's not a difference of squares. But what about this one? That's a square, that's a square, that's a difference. So this is a difference of squares, so I can continue factoring this. This one I can't though. I'm just going to bring down x squared plus 4. But this one, square root of x squared, x. Square root of 4, 2. Make one positive, make one negative. Okay? Now the check for that one is going to be a little bit more complicated, so I'm probably going to need some scratch paper to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the difference of squares first. It makes your life easier. So let's FOIL that. X times x, x squared. X times negative 2, negative 2x. 2 times x, positive 2x. 2 times negative 2, negative 4. Middle terms, what happens to them? Goes to 0. So I get x squared minus 4. And then I have that x squared plus 4 here. Now I've got to FOIL this again. X squared times x squared, x to the 4th power. Remember, you add the exponents. X squared times negative 4, negative 4x squared. 4 times x squared, positive 4x squared. 4 times negative 4, negative 16. Middle terms, what happens to them? Go to 0. So you get x to the 4th minus 16. Check. So when you're doing your check, and like, let's say this was a test question, I would definitely be looking for both of these steps. If these steps were not there, you're not going to get points for the question. Okay? So if you're struggling, all that means is you need more practice. All right. Word problem. Silly word problem, but we got to do it anyway. So volume has 3 factors, length, width, and height. So it is 3-dimensional. The volume of the rectangular prism is this. What are the factors that could represent the dimensions of the prism? All that means is to factor x, or 8x to the 3rd minus 2x squared minus 15x. Silly question, but doable. So the GCF. There's no number GCF because 2 doesn't go into 15. But there is a variable GCF. So we pick the variable that has the smallest exponent, which is x. So my first step is to factor out an x. And remember, when I'm just factoring out the GCF, 1 parentheses. So I'm going to have an 8x squared minus 2x minus, what, 15? All right. So now I got to cover this guy up and guess and check this one. So let's list the factors of A, factors of C, and since this one is negative, one has to be positive, one has to be negative, we need to look at it as 2 apart. Okay? All right. 8. 1 times 8, 2 times 4. 15. 1 times 15, 3 times 5. Try the ones closest together first. 2x, 4x. Now, when we're factoring out, don't look at the original. It's going to confuse you. Cover it up. Because now we're just looking at this one. We want to get back to this one right here. 2 apart. Remember that. And then we're going to try 3 and 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. 10x. 3 times 4 is 12. Oh, look at that. Things are working out so nice for us because it's on the first try. Now when we add these together, we need to get negative 2x. So which one has to be negative? The 12. Excuse me. Okay, so we know that that is the answer. X times 2x minus 3, and then 4x plus 5. So these are the 3 factors. One is this one is this one, and one is... I know it's silly because there's like no number value, and it's like if this was an actual like Lego, we would know how big it is, right? All right, let's do the check and call it a day. So remember, FOIL before you distribute, or box before you distribute. 2 times 4 is 8, so that's 8x squared plus 10x minus 12x minus 15. Combine like terms. What is that, negative 2? So 8x squared minus 2x minus 15. And then don't forget you have that x chilling in the front. You got to not forget to check that one. Then when you distribute it, you add the exponents. So 8x to the 3rd minus 2x squared minus 15x. And is that what I wanted? Yes, it was. Checks out. Okay, again, In order for you to get points on your tests or your Delta Math or whatever, you do have to do the checks. Yes, it's a pain in the butt. Yes, I understand. Yes, you got to do it. Okay, so I can't stress enough, if you are struggling, it does not mean that you are dumb. It just means that you need more practice. Please reach out to me so we can come up with a plan to make you get stronger. If you need more practice, I got you, but you need to come talk to me, okay? All right, guys, that's it. Have a great day, and I'll see you later.